Welcome, welcome, welcome. Sunday weekly warm-up warriors. Welcome into the exclusive Teach Better Facebook group. I am Brad Hughes, elementary principal and chief encouragement officer from Ontario, Canada. My co-host Rae Hughart, CXO of the tremendous Teach Better team. And our panel guests, our inaugural panel tonight on the weekly warm-up. We have Dana Kirby, Dr. Neil Gupta, and Dawn Harris in the house. Welcome in, everybody. We are set for a fantastic panel, getting to know these incredible leaders and educators right where they are. And we're working on stakeholder communication tonight. We're hoping that you're leaving with practical takeaways to make sure that whoever you're communicating with, you can do that just a little bit better. Welcome to the weekly warm-up. We'll see you right after the break. Welcome into the Sunday weekly warm-up, everybody, streaming exclusively in the Teach Better group on Facebook. And my co-host with the most on the Lake Michigan coast is the incredible Rae Hughart. Good evening, Rae. How are you?
Oh my gosh, I'm so excited for this panel. We've been talking about it for weeks, and we told all of you that while we're really happy weekly warm-up is here on Sundays, we actually only did it so we could facilitate as many panels as possible. So Dana, Neil, Dawn, thank you for kicking off this, I feel like it was a life goal Brad and I were trying to kind of create into action.
Thanks for the invite, guys.
So good. Before we kind of dive into too much, Brad, should we do intros? I feel like these are three people that so many people on our network are going to know, but maybe some context in case there's a new face.
100%, Rae. They either know them or they're going to be eager to get to know them. Let's kick things off with Dana. Welcome in, Dana.
Hey guys, how we doing? I am Dana Kirby. I teach at Evans Junior High School in Bloomington, Illinois. I teach PE and health, 6th, 7th, and 8th grade. This year we have about 800, just under 800 students at our school. So actually our enrollment's a little bit lower. So that's awesome for us. I am looking forward to kind of providing some information with you guys on what my role is kind of at our school and how it can be beneficial for you at your school as well.
Dana, thanks so much. How about Dr. Neil? Welcome in.
Yeah, good to see everybody. My name is Neil Gupta, and I get to serve as the Director of Secondary Education in Worthington Schools. It's a suburb of Columbus, Ohio. So I receive the middle schools and high schools in the district. And in my 8th year in this current district, it's phenomenal. I'm still pinching myself over it. I have served at state and national associations on different boards at different times. Right now, I'm not doing any of that. I'm just kind of enjoying my time in my district and been doing some consulting on the side and I got a chance to connect with educators in my state and then out of state also, either with presenting or consulting.
Welcome and thank you, Dr. Neil. And Dawn Harris, welcome into the panel. Let us know who you are, where you are, and about the incredible work that you do.
Absolutely. Thank you so much for having me. I'm excited to be here. Dawn Harris from Southwest Ohio. I actually teach in a small district called Franklin, Ohio at the high school level, educating in the general education setting, English language arts, but I also serve gifted and talented students as well. Serve on a number of committees within my district, specifically our PBIS committee, which I really enjoy working with our educators and our students, just improving the culture at school. And, we're really blessed this year. We started the year off strong. It's been so exciting seeing all of the different kinds of activities and programs that we're building for our students and just watching them thrive in that setting has been exciting. But I love writing and presenting. I'm author of Plan Like a Pirate, part of the DVC fam, so that's pretty exciting. And I spend a lot of time on social media with friends like you, just sharing all sorts of amazing things about my journey through education, and it's wonderful. I enjoy it. So thank you again for having me.
Brad, we are so lucky to have all of these people here. We are talking stakeholder communication. We have so many perspectives, so many different roles, so many different elements of insight that we're going to be able to dive into today.
Rae, I know that you and I are totally lit up about this opportunity to talk with Dana, Neil, and Dawn tonight. One thing I'd love to know from each of our educators is what lights you up about your current role? What delights you about going to work each and every day? Can we start off with Dawn? What delights you about your work?
Oh gosh. I think honestly, just going in and seeing the kids' faces every morning, like just the very first period of the day, my kids are always like, "Oh, Ms. Harris, you are just too much already. It's too early." But within just a few minutes, everybody's fired up and excited and ready to go. And I think we are just so blessed as educators to be in an environment where we can just have that kind of influence over the young people who are in front of us every day and getting them fired up about learning. It's contagious. Like our enthusiasm is just something that we should strive to pass on every day. And for me, that's just the thing, just to be around people who love kids as much as I do and just sharing the joy of that with everyone around me.
Is education the only field where we are really proud in the morning to be as obnoxious as possible for our students? Like I used to be in the hallways with Dana Kirby in the morning, and the goal was to be as loud and energetic as early as possible. Is that not right, Dana?
That is so true, which actually leads me into my answer to that question is the people that I teach with here at this school are absolutely amazing, and I get spoiled and I get to go to work with my friends every day. And that just kind of brings a joy for me. But I think it's also important that the kids see that. And so, Dawn, like you said, it really is about the kids, but at the same time, like I feel like sometimes they might not see that role model that they might have, or just that interaction. Like we do enjoy being here at work. It's not awful to come to every day. And so I really feel like they feed off that energy and that fuel. And it just is, it helps bring out the passion, I think, for being here and being surrounded by awesome people.
Neil, are you having dance parties in the morning at 8 a.m. too? I see Katie Miglin's comment.
Yeah. So I've got to admit, like this year, and again, this is my 8th year in this district. And so as a district level leader, my office is housed in the central office building. And I always make a joke that it's really just, really these days it's a laptop and a cell phone. As long as I've got those two things in my backpack, I travel anywhere. But really connecting with kids, I'll go to that, has been amazing, just to be in the hallways and connecting with kids. I mean, I'm talking about like being a hero on the first, you want to be a hero and like first couple of days of school, go help a middle school kid open their locker. Like you want instant gratification of like just this connection and bond for life. It would be right there. And then for as much energy as I think that I bring to the table and, our team, the new teachers that we've hired, are game changers. I don't know if it's the gray hair and the no hair that have kind of settled in for me. And I feel like I'm still relevant and I think I'm dancing, but I'll tell you, these, 20 whatever year old educators that have come into our district are just phenomenal. And they are just loving on kids and excited. And they're almost like a gang when it comes to hanging out with each other, going into the cafeterias to hang out with students, being at their games and cheering them on. And it's just a pride moment for me.
Brad, as a principal, I'm sure you're seeing that a lot in your building.
100%. And it's something I'm reflecting on as I'm hearing Dr. Neal talk about this moment shared between middle schoolers and the principal over administrator over a lock or a locker. It really is those small moments of connection and interaction that over time add up to greater and greater trust, greater and greater affection. That it's those small moments that, cumulative together, develop the relationship and the culture within your building. And those little moments too of talking with and interacting with all of your stakeholders, every member of your school community ecosystem, all of us as educators have both a responsibility and an opportunity to grow those relationships, interaction by interaction, moment by moment. What's coming to mind for you, Rae?
It's interesting. I agree with everything you've said. I love the thinking through the students, the people, the environment that educators create every single day in school. And I think that really lends itself well as we get into our discussion this afternoon about stakeholder communication, because this energy that fuels us, that brings our hallways to life every single day, then needs to be communicated out into our communities, out to our stakeholders, out to our parents, so they really understand the magic of schools. Where I live, there's a paper that comes out every week, and I intentionally don't get it because sometimes it's full of negativity, but somebody handed it to me this week, and it was just full of questions about the schools. And that made me so sad. I'm like, we can do better. Let's really paint the picture of our schools. What are some easy communication strategies that we can all just share freely here in this space to fix this, so our newspapers are reporting wonderful things about our schools rather than being left with questions. So I'm so excited to dive into this, and I cannot say enough how appreciative I am that all of you are here.
Rae, this is an awesome opportunity for all of us to dig into what it takes to tell our own stories, both as individuals in education, but also on behalf of our schools and our districts. Dr. Joe Sanfilippo and Danny Bauer will say and agree that if we don't tell our stories, someone else will tell them for us. In addition, if we don't share information that our stakeholders need, they may jump to conclusions or fill in missing information with assumptions or worst case scenarios. So I'm really excited to dig into who needs to know, how do we let them know, and how do we know if it's making a difference?
So we're going to get started with our discussion, but Brad, I feel like you and I need to have a moment. You know how much we love these lame commercial and like transitions. This is one we haven't gotten to click. I get to click a new button today.
It's the world premiere of our Sunday weekly warm-up panel.
I'm so excited. We'll be right back.
Wow, welcome in, warm-up warriors. Rae, that was a winning commercial. There was the intensity, the urgency, there was the excitement of connecting with incredible guests like Dana Kirby, Dr. Neil Gupta, and Dawn Harris, and of course, my co-host with the most, Rae Hughart. Rae, what is firing you up about the opportunity to talk about stakeholder communication tonight?
I think that my only goal today, and I'm seeing it a lot in the comments, people need action steps, things that they can start and do as early as tomorrow morning if they have opportunities. So whether you're a classroom teacher listening, maybe you support in some way, you have a coaching role, maybe you're an administrator, I want to try and give it all up. So if you don't mind, like Neil, can I throw it to you and just ask your perspective? I randomly emailed you and said, hey, we're doing a thing on stakeholder communication. Will you come? I'll figure out the details later. And you said yes. What were your initial thoughts?
Yeah, so in our school district, our superintendent in his first year as a superintendent, and he brought in all the district staff into the theater. And, my mind was swimming on what's he going to talk about? Like, you get everybody together. I'll be honest with you, here's what not to do. And I was in a previous district, and they put the test scores on the big screen. Don't do that. He didn't do that. He gave his expectations as a superintendent, and the idea of like clear is kind. I think that was kind of like, let's just say to everybody, this is kind of what is out there. And he had 6 of them, and the first and the 6th are the same. It is be kind to kids, and he went from there. So just kind of get an idea of the kind of person and the kind of pitch that it was. But one of them was communicate. And he said, I'm going to say it 3 times. Because I think you need to hear it and need to say it over and over and over again. Our community, our students, our parents, our staff need to hear it. And they might need to see it 3 different ways. And so I think what gets frustrating for us at times is we might say, well, gosh, we emailed last week about that, and how come they didn't read it? And, where I think we could all kind of be on the offensive and said, well, we sent that in an email. What he was giving us, I guess the challenge is of, we've got to make sure that we're trying to hit them, whoever it is, where they are. And you might have to do it in three times. And I talked to a group of students once, and I said to them, because I teach a class, I said, do you want me to email you the information, put it in the Google Classroom, or do you want to put it in the GroupMe app? And they all said yes. And I was like, no, which one? And then I realized I had to do all 3 of them. And at first I was frustrated about that. And then I thought, you know what? Like, if it's about getting the message, because all we're really talking about is copy paste. Really, for me, it didn't take that long. And if I really want that information out there, I had to kind of let go of this ego that was in me that says, I'm going to do it my way, and you better do it your way, and instead do it, the way that they want. As an adult, for me, I don't need to know the information until I need to know it. So we've got to make sure that we hit them at the right spot for it. So it just kind of gave us that ability, I think, first and foremost, just to step back and think about, how and when are we trying to I guess, approach our stakeholders, and making sure that we do it in a way that's kind. The first reflection, if they don't get it, can't be that they didn't do something. It has to be back on us to say, how can we do it better? So I'll kind of pause. I got a lot more to say, but I also want to learn from Dana and Dawn also.
Yeah, I think a couple of things actually, Neil, that I want to tag on with is we have not a large Hispanic population in our school, but our Hispanic population has definitely grown. And that's kind of one thing that we have talked about and kind of made a goal for our PE department actually is how can we make those communications easier for families? And making sure that we're reaching everyone and allowing parents to feel connected to the school and not disconnected, putting our face out there and allowing the opportunity, I guess is the big word, for them to ask questions and feel comfortable asking questions. And like you said, Neil, all those communication pieces are great, but when is it occurring? And I think that right there is very key to being effective in what we're trying to accomplish. Are we giving the information ahead of time, or are we reacting with that information because we missed the boat, right? Or whatever the case was. But I think it's important that communication for sure, and when is huge for us.
I love this connection and add-on between not only this challenge of 3, which I think is a great reflection, then this challenge of the how, the modality in which you present the information. Now we're blending in language as a way to incorporate, making sure that you reach everybody. These are really good checkpoints to not only add into your week this week, but months from now to say, have I shared this 3 times? Is it in multiple forms? And did I make sure that the language I use reaches the people that are part of the audience that needs to hear this message? John, what are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, I'm listening to Dana and Neil, and immediately these connections are coming to me. As a classroom teacher, parent communication and making those connections with parents is really key. And so I think about timing and technology, right? In real time, when I'm in the classroom, I want parents to know what is going on every time something's happening in the classroom. And the really great thing is we have so much technology that can assist us with that. So, you mentioned, Rae, things that teachers can do tomorrow. My advice to any teacher is make sure when you go in tomorrow that every parent knows that they can access your learning management system, whether you're in Google or Teams, giving parents access to what's going on in the classroom right away, right? So once they sign up for those notifications, especially with the high school kiddos, parents sometimes they just assume things are going well and the kids are all right, right? But sometimes they're not, and parents need to kind of have an awareness of what's happening in the classroom because kids aren't always communicating effectively at home. And so for me, one of the things that we do in our LMS, we use Google Classroom. So I have a WDIM deck, right? And all my parents and students are aware of that. What did I miss? So every day that Google slide deck is updated. And if a kid's on vacation or they're out sick, it's more than just the update to Google Classroom and the parent gets a notification, but what can they go in and see real time? And it takes me, I don't know, maybe 2 or 3 minutes, for each of my sections of teaching to get that 1 or 2 slides updated. And it gives the kids some additional information on where they need to go. Is it in Google Classroom or is it in another platform? But really just keeping those students and parents aware at every turn of what is going on in the classroom. And they love it. They appreciate it. At some point, about 2 weeks into school, kids are missing. What did I miss yesterday, Miss Harris? And I look at them and they're like, it's in the WDIM, isn't it? Yes, it is. Go there. Parents can go there. The kids can go there. But it's that real time using technology to communicate and connect with both parents and students, giving them access to everything they need in the moment.
Dawn, I just want to chime in real quick. I really appreciate the fact that you're putting that out there for high school kids.
Yeah.
I think, we want to use the post-pandemic, right? However that looks, right? But I think that you're right. I think kids have relied on technology because of that, and parents as well. And to think that just because we're older, our executive functioning skills are there, what that's a long reach, I think. And so I appreciate the fact that you're putting that out there for high schools as well.
So one thing to also kind of say, which I appreciate that's embedded in this WDIM, is that the student felt comfortable by coming up and asking you, what did I miss? And I know that you created a place for it, but if we just kind of put right there, like your approachability matters. Like I feel like, again, if people aren't asking us questions, then we have to, again, kind of either say, gosh, man, I am really clear. I am amazingly clear. Like, oh, I'm the best in the world. But we probably have to just realize, like, or do I feel that I'm approachable? Like, we really have to almost kind of, and probably it's probably that second one of, when I feel like, when I think about my agenda, whenever I have a meeting and I think about the end of the agenda and I go, gosh, if nobody asks me questions, then I gotta kind of take a little reflection on me, not because I'm awesome. It's the other way around, that people didn't feel like that they could ask a question and not have repercussions of, oh my gosh, I told you that last week. What are you thinking right there? And I think that that's part of that communication piece is people are going to, we've all been there. Sometimes you kind of feel like you missed something, but you're afraid to speak up. But if you're in a good trusting relationship and environment, then you can say it, and there can't be that. So I have to think about my eyes, and I have to think about my demeanor and approach and tone when somebody says, hey, I think I missed this. A staff member, for example, or a parent, we can't just kind of roll our eyes and kind of shrug it off because they won't feel that approachable. But again, we have to be patient, point them back to it again, and know that that's really what the most important part of it is.
When we think about stakeholder communication, we think about whether our roles as school leaders or administrators or teachers, we're often the hub for that communication. And I've heard it said that the art of that kind of communication is treating the 100th question the same as you treated the first question. I used to think that, and I still want to demonstrate grace and patience if I'm hearing repeat questions over and over. But as you are all saying, if we're hearing that question 1, 2, and then 3 times, we have to look back at ourselves and say, what can I do differently to make sure that the information is more clear, that it's reaching more people? And I say to my stakeholders, your questions prompt me that others are going to be seeking the same information. So I've got to get out in front of communication. And one strategy I've been trying that I've been really excited to say is working for me is a strategy that I call what else? What else is coming to mind? So if we're able to get out to our stakeholders rather than wait for communication and questions to come to us, whether it's in the classroom or the hallways or the yards or the staff lounge or even the grocery store or the variety store in the neighborhood, if you ask folks, what's coming to mind for you about life at our school? What's coming to mind for you about our classroom? And listen to them and then ask them, and what else? What else is coming to mind? Because often we're in such a hurry to go from one place to another. But I'm wondering how you are engaging in feedback loops to make sure that your communication is having the desired effect or impact, and how are you closing those loops, or how are you addressing those blind spots when they come up?
Well, I think one thing that we're kind of addressing at our school is a comprehensive health curriculum. It's a big deal. And honestly, obviously we've met, our district, let's say, has met with a little bit of pushback from some families. And I think the biggest thing is potentially the lack of knowledge, maybe, that is out there, and what is it including? And I think some people are a little bit, I don't want to use the word misinformed, but just maybe don't have all the information. And so our middle schools are working to try to provide that information. So as you said before, I believe Neil or Brad, I forget, when you don't give the information, it's going to be created, whether you like it or not. And it's probably not going to be the complete story, right? There's 2 sides and 3 sides to every story. And so I think that's just definitely one thing that we've really tried to focus on, is being able to provide that communication early. And again, be approachable when questions are being asked, and validate their want to know what's going on, as opposed to not caring or not showing up, and so embracing that as opposed to being upset about that.
Dawn, are there ways that you can think of that you're closing feedback loops and making sure that what you intend is actually having the desired impact?
Gosh, I would just say what comes to mind for me with this is, as both building leaders, district leaders, classroom teachers, the amount of information that passes through us each day, if we thought about it, right, it can be overwhelming. We think about there are notes coming in from parents. There are emails coming in from people, throughout the building. There's information coming from district to the building that passes through to the teacher that needs to pass through to students, and things that we have to send home to students, with students to parents. Like, there are all of these avenues of communication that we have to keep up on. And we think about really closing the feedback loop. For me, what's really important is having places to go to get the right information. And I think what our building leadership and teachers have come together to create are different places that we can go to get answers without having to create additional communication, if that makes sense, right? If we can go find an answer somewhere on our own and close something up and wrap it up and be done with it, that's great. Trying to eliminate the volume of emails that are coming through by having spreadsheets and charts and things that allow us to go in and see where are kids during advisory, or what kids are in an intervention, or what student is, checked into the office right now. Ways that we can go seek out information that's missing, as opposed to add more into that, the traffic that is communication that fills up our day. Because I was just talking with someone the other day. I think it was like last Monday or something. I think I had by 10:30, like 30 something emails come through, right? And I remember 10 years ago, that wasn't even a thing. Like, yes, we had email, but you checked it at the end of the day, and like you followed up if you needed to. It was mostly just like information. But now we're responding again in real time via technology. And I think we've become very savvy at managing that while doing the whole classroom teaching and leading the building kind of thing. But it's better if we can just find ways to seek out the answers that we need without creating more communication and opening up more loops to have to close.
It's interesting. I'm so thankful that with these panels, we're going to do kind of a recap of major points. But Dawn, I just have to shout out the fact that both your answers so far have really been around the concept of creating consistent routines. And I think that that's a really important element of communication. Neil, you brought up the fact that communication is not only verbal, it's also nonverbal. I saw that Liv reinforced that in the comments, but routine is such an important component, and something that was the only way I found some peace with communication, because I think communication can be excessively overwhelming. There's never enough of it. So if you incorporate a routine, whether it be by having the go-to clear spots or having communication daily with your routine of the slides, like that allows you as the teacher to be more successful because it's a part of something that you're expecting. And it also allows the people consuming the information to have that routine and predictability, which we do know is what's good for kids.
So, Brad, I want to jump in because, and piggyback off of what Don was talking about. I remember that question being posed as far as what's the best communication tactic, strategy, whatever. And I was part of a Twitter chat, and everybody was giving their app ideas, right? Use this app, use GroupMe, use this. And finally somebody said like F2F. And then somebody was like, oh, that's amazing, F2F. So I'm like looking for like the app. I'm like, where's F2F? And face to face. And it's so funny because I think that we are kind of searching for like that's the silver bullet. And we're kind of looking for the one that's the most efficient and the most whatever. And then I had to kind of like be brought back to kind of reality of like nothing gives up, the face to face. And so I think the anchor for us is, you've got to build in the structures that Don talked about and make it formal, but also informal. Like we call them like key communicator groups. And we've got external key communicators that are a group of parents that might be in, might be staff members. We call internal key communicators that we meet with monthly. And then we have student groups. And I'd love to say that it can't be your student council group because that's not the cross section. So we have to somehow remake the Breakfast Club movie so people will understand. Like we want that cross section of students. But I'll tell you what, and our superintendent, again, I'm bragging about him. Like he says like, you guys can all district leaders come into the meeting, but you're not there to defend, because I'll listen to students say things like, well, how come the district doesn't? And then it's things that I've actually communicated myself personally. And I'm starting to kind of, I want to defend and I want to defend. And I have to remember like, okay, it just wasn't clear. So what can you learn and what can you glean and become that like, person that kind of mines for the data. And so when I go into the lunch, I've turned into talking to students and telling them things and asking them about whatever, but also saying things that that I'm kind of personally overseeing and asking them for feedback. Like, hey, did you hear about this? Did you hear about, what do you think about that? And I'm always constantly looking for some things that are going to help me out.
Rae, when I think about stakeholder communication, and maybe our listeners and viewers and other educators, we often think about people outside our organization, whether they're parents and caregivers, maybe they are people we report to or they report to us. But what I am just loving about discussion with Dawn, Dana, and Neil tonight is that each of us is centering students as the key stakeholders in any communication. Let's face it, when we're teaching, when we're interacting with kids, what better stakeholder communication can we create than developing those relationships where kids know that we're approachable and that they matter to us, and in turn we will matter to them. I mean, who is going to speak on our behalf as far as what's going in on our classrooms and hallways and libraries and campuses better than the kids that we serve? So I'm just so heartened to hear that stakeholder communication doesn't have to be home and school or home and district office, or staff to staff. It's about centering communication, positive communication, loving communication with the students we serve every day. I just love that.
I wonder if that would be an interesting activity to either do with the full staff or with your department, or however you choose to kind of be a leader within a group, and say, I wonder if you can remind the people around you, your colleagues, who those stakeholders are. Really reinforce the fact that it's not just parents, it's not just community members, but staff to staff is included, leadership to staff is included, staff to students are included. Because to be honest, that there's been so many discussions so far tonight that I was like, oh, we've been talking about stakeholder communication for weeks, and I haven't thought of that perspective at all. And I think it's such a wonderful opportunity that we have here on Sunday Weekly Warm Up. It's not about having all the answers, but is there some lens or some element of perspective that we can wear proudly tomorrow to say, yeah, I was already ready for the week because I'm an awesome educator, but with this little tidbit of an hour-long discussion, now I feel like I have gained new perspective to be even more successful headed into my week.
I think one thing that I've kind of taken from this conversation actually already is, like you were just saying, Rae, the staff to staff communication. And, I get the luxury of servicing all 800 students in my school, right? And so here I have this opportunity to reach everyone. We have I don't want to say a large turnover, but since COVID has occurred, we're in this rebuilding kind of phase, or restart kind of phase, right? And so we have a lot of new teachers that have never seen maybe how my department specifically works. Teachers are the worst about bragging about what they do. You get inside your room and you do amazing things, and then that's it. We don't want to, you don't want to talk in the hallway about what awesome just happened, right? And so, you got to make sure that you push in yourself. And I guess this would be my take from here. Push yourself a little bit and try to allow the other people in your school just to know what you're doing. And allow them to, kind of be a part of that. Allow them to be able to help celebrate what you're doing. And again, as I say, I get the pleasure and luxury of being able to teach and communicate with all the students in the school every single day. So we had a team specifically. We have 2 6th grade, 2 7th grade, 2 8th grade teams. And we had a team specifically that was kind of struggling with their team that week. And I said, come on down, let's talk. Let's have them all together, and we'll be here and allow that communication to occur, not just in your classroom and on your team and your pod, but, including us in that as well, because obviously our department has such a social aspect of it. So, providing those opportunities to reflect and celebrate and allow people to, be a part of what you're doing also is a great way to allow that staff to allow that communication to continue.
And I agree completely. And I think something we need to also include in those conversations with our peers about all the great things that are going on is how we're empowering students to self-advocate. Self-advocacy is huge. When we start talking about how to teach kids to advocate for themselves and for others, And we talk about communication, you think about all of the things that kids need in a day from us, from each other, from building leaders, from their parents. When we can teach them, right, how to problem solve and seek answers on their own, we are going to teach them to be excellent questioners, but also, Neil, it goes back to what you said about being approachable earlier. We're always going to be approachable for them, and they're always going to know that they can come to us with questions and seeking answers and whatnot. But what if we figured out ways to help them go and get their own answers, and to take that communication, on a different path where they're communicating with one another about their needs, and sorting through those together is so empowering for them. And I think those conversations that you're talking about, Dana, that we're having with our peers, if we share those kinds of experience, hey, listen what this kid did in class, like he was helping this other student, with a problem with something from math. Or I heard a student ask about our conversation class the other day was honors diploma. And someone was like, go to the student handbook in the Google Drive. It's on page 32 or whatever. Like, and I didn't have to answer that question. I was like, oh my God, yes, this is awesome. And so and even communicating then, if they didn't know where it was, Ms. Harris, can you this is exactly what I need. That advocacy piece is so important. And I had someone just yesterday actually asked me, like, if you're going to describe, I think this is a great question for us all to reflect on. If you're going to describe for a sixth grader in 20 words or less what advocacy is, what is that? What does that look like? And that was just a great bit of reflection for me, because that puts it in the simplest terms for us, right? We can talk about that as educators together and say, okay, this is what I think it looks like, and come up with that common definition of advocacy for our kids and use that throughout the whole building. And so I think it is important for us to talk, to empower our kids to be self-advocates, so that communication that is extra really isn't there. Again, those routines, Rae.
Love it. Brad, I feel like this discussion has flown. I don't want it to be over, but we do have one extra section we wanted to add specific to our panel day, where we really get into the nitty-gritty of those action steps. So we'll kind of transition here and come back to each one of you and say, yes, I know you've shared a lot. Yes, we've shared our reflection even on what's been shared. But is there a challenge that we can give to our community that they can do as soon as tomorrow, especially this week, to kind of reevaluate and refresh their communication from any lens you choose? And then hopefully our viewers here and our Teach Better family can either choose one or maybe all of them to kind of take action and be a little bit better on communication. Brad, what do you think?
Rae, I love a good challenge. And I love setting up our warm-up warriors for practical strategies that they can take away as they turn the corner on the weekend and as they look ahead to a great week ahead.
So good. We'll be right back for this little quick recap and those really important action steps to all hold ourselves accountable.
You are with the Teach Better Sunday weekly warm-up, streaming exclusively with the one, the only teachbettergroup.com on Facebook. It's Brad Hughes and Rae Hughart from the Teach Better team with our guests Dana Kirby, Dr. Neil Gupta, and Dawn Harris. And we are wrapping up a fantastic conversation on stakeholder communication. As we were coming to the end of our previous segment, I was reflecting on the fundamental nature of communication and how it's changed from transmissive, where we would send home a newsletter or and like a single email or something we put on the lawn sign, to interactive. And that's reflected in all of the ways that we communicate as educators through social media and through other ways of interacting. And I think that also represents a fundamental shift in how we come to understand education, from transmissive, the sage on the stage, and the kids are vessels to be filled with our knowledge, to interactive. And all of our guests, and I think back to Dana talking about, the approachability, the interactivity. Do we want a community of transmission of information, or do we want to grow a community of interaction where every stakeholder has a role to play in making things better and better? This is our opportunity for our guests to let us know what they think we should be thinking about, a challenge that we can take on as we look ahead to the week ahead. Rae, what's coming to mind for you in terms of that challenge?
I'm excited for these challenges. To be honest, I think this is a perfect spot to either reiterate a challenge that was shared previously to really ensure that it sticks in our community's minds, or a challenge that we may not have gotten to just add another layer. But there are so many to choose from this dialogue. So I'm actually nervous that we'll miss some. You guys have to go back. If you're popping in now and you missed the conversation, make sure to go back and listen to the whole thing.
Well, the interactivity allows us to keep in touch with our guests tonight, Rae, or with either of us. If ideas come up or challenges come up or setbacks come up, how can we work through them together? Maybe I'll shift things over to Dr. Neil Gupta for your goodness. What's your takeaway and what's your challenge for our listeners tonight?
Yeah, my takeaway is I think Don kind of put the light bulb on for me about just the idea of just that the consistency piece that we have to be thinking about and making sure. And you put words around this idea about the what did I miss that I really liked. Just having that section that's in there and having it consistently in that one spot. I think for me the sharing part is. And I can tell you where I got burnt. Where I get burnt is I communicate early and I don't realize the magnitude of this thing that we're about to communicate needs to live outside of that one email. And it's not fair for people to have to go back and hunt and find it, and then it becomes also this thing where whatever information is, and I'll give you an example in a second, it seems to sometimes snowball. I don't realize it at the time, but then it snowballs. And then, and then you kind of go back and you feel like you're piecemealing this thing as you go along. I think the learning that I'm having, and it's one of my counterpart that I work with, his name's Rob Messenheimer, and he's got this brain that when we sit down together, he constantly is thinking about the future, about, if it's for this Friday's, homeroom or something like that, that's one thing. But kind of Dana talked about, the health curriculum sort of thing, or I'm thinking about graduation requirements of this complex thing, this beast, this animal. And there was a 75-page State Department document that we had to kind of look at to understand it best. And I remember, I brought in our principals and our counselors, and we developed a graph. I told them to draw a visual graphic representation of what does this 75-page thing encapsulate. And so they got, markers and paper, and they made some cool posters, and I was patting myself on the back. We had a great day that day, and I went home and had a good night's sleep. And the next morning, one of the principals took that and actually went back into Canva and created this graphic with made them icons. And then we started having this thought of well, gosh, now it's on one sheet of paper. 75 pages is on one sheet of paper with these icons. And we said, wouldn't it be great if you could click on it, each icon, and you could open up for more information when you need it. I don't need all 75 pages right away, but if I want to know more about it, when I need to know about it, then I'll be able to go to it. Well, so then it kind of luckily we just kept playing in the same document. And then a year later, somebody said, well, okay, so that's the information about the state requirements, but what's Worthington's, how is it going to happen and look like in Worthington? So we just added information in that icon, and it became a one-stop shop. And what I'm most proud of is, and it's our counselors and everybody else that's, will kind of keep me on my toes and say, if they have a question and I answer their question, they're like, are you going to put that in the document? Are you going to put in the document so that we keep this living and breathing document that stays outside of Neil's head or on Neil's computer, and it's shared with families, but in this clear, crisp way? And I think that, again, we got to keep thinking about that end user, and we can't just say, well, I emailed that last week. And so I would say a couple things. Visuals, representations, I think are important, and things that kind of, sit in a public place for everybody to have access to are going to be important.
I love that. Can I jump in? Because
Please do.
That was really awesome. I'm sitting here listening to all this just amazing stuff. And I think what we're all really talking about in this stakeholder communication is breaking barriers to learning, right? Because that's what we're in, the learning business. And it's whatever way, whatever method that we can use to kind of get the information across to whoever needs it is what's really important. It's whatever it takes mentality, right? That's what it is in education. And, I love that, you mentioned the one-stop shop idea, Neil, and then this idea of approachability. And Dana, you talk about, timing and getting out in front, but also working in real time simultaneously. And there's just so much to kind of convey. And I think for me, it's just making sure that I have access to everything that I need to, and everyone that I need to have access to be an effective communicator, right? Where's my one-stop shop for each of these things, and who do I need to communicate with directly to get the information across? And so what I would say for classroom teachers, first and foremost, because you know what, we're right there with students, from the second that we set foot in the door, go in tomorrow, whatever your data management system is or your grade book, go to your classroom, find your students' parents' email addresses, click send emails to all those and say, here's our classroom code, and send that out. Get those folks in your classroom, basically in your learning environment, so everyone knows, parents, stakeholders included, what was missed. It's there.
I think my challenge and my takeaway is, be a good listener. And we're coming off the end of a weekend, and we would love to say we've walked in students' shoes over the weekend, and what we've been through this weekend and what they've been through this weekend could be drastically different things, right? And we definitely need to move forward, but we can't be content first driven, unfortunately. So we got to make sure that our kids are there, not just physically, but mentally as well. So if it's that extra, time to, as I stated before, listen to a coworker in the morning, and be that person, that listening ear for them, and maybe you change their day. But be that smile. Just say hi to kids in the hallway. I think that creates that, Neil, as you talked about earlier, creating that welcoming feeling and that ability for kids to feel comfortable to come ask for something. And Dawn, again, you said, be that consistent place where information can be. I always try to make sure I'm out in the hallways in the mornings, and specifically before school. In between classes, yes, but specifically before school, because you can kind of really get that pulse of what's happened over the weekend and what's happening. Even if it's means showing your face during lunch for 2 or 3 minutes. But I think that's my challenge, is make sure you be able to work outside of your classroom, put your face out there, and allow kids to see you for you, on your good days and bad days, but allow kids to see you, for sure.
All right.
Wow, Rae, talk about a one-stop shop for reflection, interaction.
I'm jumping in.
Go ahead, Neil.
I got to jump in on something, because Dana,
please do.
Like you used it. I know it's like time, but like you used the idea of listener, and I think we did miss that. And I don't want to let that go, because you just caught this vivid story. I think is appropriate. I remember I was walking into my assistant superintendent's office, and I had this draft paper I was working on. And I remember I wanted her to read it and give me some reflection and some feedback. And so I walked in. I'm walking like 5-6 steps away from her desk, and I said, "Will you proofread this for me and give me some feedback?" And she, as I'm walking towards her, and I'd spent like 3 hours on it, and I was like 5 steps away, and she said, "Who's this going to?" And I said, "The principal's." And she goes, "Okay." She grabs the piece of paper and closes her eyes. Like, I'm like, "What is she doing?" I thought she was going to read it. She's like, "Okay, it's a week before Thanksgiving break. I'm trying to just get through this, certain week. I just had parent teacher conferences. This is happening. This is like she was transforming into the reader of what is going on. And then she starts opening up her eyes, and I snatched it out of her hand, and I said, "Nope, this can wait until after Thanksgiving break." And, and she was shocked by it. And I said, "You really helped me out right there. Like, timing's important, listening's important, empathy is important of where our people are." And I think you gave me that story as you were kind of sharing, and I appreciate that.
Rae Hughart, what's coming to mind for you as we wrap up this incredible panel discussion on stakeholder communication? Do you have a challenge, or do you have a moment of reflection to share?
I think there's been so many challenges. My challenge would be to go back and re-listen to this and write down all the challenges, because there really have been some actionable steps that we can take, and I don't want to make sure those go overlooked. But I will say, Brad, this is exactly what we wanted. We wanted multiple perspectives coming together to talk shop in an approachable, safe space where our community can be better from this conversation. So I'm just so appreciative that to be honest, while I so appreciate you all being here, which I've said 9 times, I'm very, very appreciative that Brad is the one who was really an advocate for making these panels happen. And I'm so happy and proud that our team has made that a priority this year. So thank you, Brad. I so appreciate it.
Well, thank you all. And together we're better. And I've had the privilege of both participating in and moderating a number of panels, and just the energy and the grace and the goodwill and the great thinking and the great practical strategies that people bring into the space is truly inspiring. And this is why we're here, is to get better and better together, to learn from one another, and also to act as critical friends for one another when times are tough. So this has been wonderful to welcome Dawn, Dana, and Neil into the space. We wish you a fantastic week ahead, and we have successfully getting our warm-up warriors ready for the week of wonderful communication and helping to remedy the Sunday scaries with some practical advice, Rae.
I love it. Friends, do not forget, in our Teach Better community, the Teach Better conference is coming up here in literally just a few weeks. I'm going to try and not like vomit as I say that. We're ready. But if you haven't registered, we are like just at that cusp where I'd hate for you to miss out, but tickets are selling quick. So please make sure you do that. A lot of the conversation, not only here on the screen, but in the comments, I had people that are going to be all together to speak at this event and network at this event. So if you are not only eager to be a part of our Teach Better community at the event, you'll also be able to learn from these incredible minds. And do not forget, after we wrap this all up, you will be able to share this conversation on Facebook, YouTube, Twitter, Twitch, and LinkedIn on Monday night, and also follow these incredible educators on social media. So there is more to come. Thank you to everybody again for joining us, and we'll be back next week for our Sunday weekly warm-up. Bye, guys.